Take off. Line up.
Pull. Sleeveless slab coats. We got to tell Jay. Sleeveless slab coats. We're in the fucking lab. He asked me last night. He said, "What are you gonna call the gym?" And I was like, "I called it the lab the other day. I just feel like a fuck."
I call it the lab ever since you called it the one time. I'll be like, hey, I'll be at the lab, or I say it all the time.
Dude, I'm gonna order some lab coats. We're gonna cut the fucking sleeves off, get our names embroidered on them.
Come on. Machine. So we're about to kick off a new training block in the GBRS performance program. So what better way to start it out is to have my man here, DJ, in the lab, kind of getting into our science mode, kind of validating our training, what we're doing, where we're going, and where we're going from there. Obviously, we need to make sure that we're making the right decisions with the amount of stress that we're exposing to people. So we're going to take this opportunity. Hawkins Dynamics sent us some force plates that we can really explore this and add some objective measurements to what we're doing.
Yeah, do you think you get actual data on what you're doing? Like, it's one thing slapping on the plate and giving a pull, but if you have inconsistencies, and a lot of it I do, because basically my whole right side I've kind of rebuilt a couple times, and to be able to see, am I generating force equally? Because that's really what I want. I don't want to have a strong side and a weak side, trying to get them independent. But this really gives us a good opportunity to actually see what it is. It's not bro science right now. We're about to put on some Bill Nye the Science Guy, actually get into it.
We're going to go with a squat test first, just a body weight test, basically tracking his asymmetries. Are we getting more out of the left, more out of the right? The weight of his foot, we can actually see that from the force plates. Just kind of see where DJ's at with his movement.
Yeah, like for a lot of this stuff, like back in the day, I used to lift in like squat shoes. So elevated heels, even like a Metcon shoe, something like that with a hard sole. And we were talking about like had a lot of foot pain, started getting some weird knee pain, and we swapped over to these. You can feel your foot spread out the entire foot. It'll be cool to see the inconsistencies I have. All
right, so we're going to jump into this just with that body weight test first. DJ's just kind of staying in the middle of the force plates. We're going to jump right in here. Set up for a squat. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice and slow. Good. Let's get a couple of them. Good. Stop there.
It's funny because I can feel, in these shoes, I can feel the inconsistencies in my feet.
What do you feel?
I feel shifting weight over a little bit to the right side. I can feel that right toe coming off the ground and trying to force it back down. And then I can feel like a little bit of slosh pipe compensation. Like I'll go down, I'll feel myself favor over a little bit, and I'm trying to balance it out. I think now just because I'm hyper aware, but
hyper aware, obviously DJ is very in tune with what's going on the inside of his body. And I think sometimes technology serves a good port because everything he just said, we can see. So if we come over, if you guys zoom in here, as we can see the asymmetries he has between the left and right, just slightly leaning, putting a little bit more force onto that left foot versus the right. And you watch as he continues, it just starts to exacerbate a little bit more. And then if we roll over to his foot placement, this is a good indicator of what DJ was talking about, how he can have his whole foot on the ground. I wish we had these measurements before you started getting into barefoot shoes, but good displacement of his weight. It's full foot focused, pretty symmetrical from that standpoint. So that's a good test. So now let's go to a counter movement jump, DJ. All right, so moving into this next block, we're going to be focused on putting a lot of force into the ground. So we want to track this with the counter movement jump as seen here, see how much force he's putting into the ground, how much he's decelerating into the ground with, and then as well, are we tracking any sort of asymmetries between the left versus right side?
Land normal, should I try to land soft?
I want you to jump as high as you can and land whatever you got. Stand still. Whenever you're ready. Max effort. Go! So building upon that body weight squat, those asymmetries, when we speed things up, things can become worse. So that's a good thing we can do as coaches. If I'm trying to find out things, I can speed things up. Does it get worse? Does it get better? Can we improve on this? So off that jump, we noticed from that body weight squat, DJ had those slight asymmetries. It's no mystery. DJ's hips are pretty freaking trash. So we know that we have asymmetries, and that's why we focus so much on mobility work in the GBRS performance program, so we can improve those things. But we noticed when the body weight squat, when we had more on the left versus the right, now look when we're trying to land, his body's just kind of naturally like, oh, I need to guard that side because you're speeding things up. So look how much force he put into the ground, how much force is in the ground when he lands, and then just noticing those slight differences. Then the concentric portion of his jump, you're pretty symmetrical. And then on the land, there's definitely a favoring that's going on.
See a favor on the right or the left?
That is favoring more force on the left side. So you're favoring the right.
Yep. Yeah, which is surprising because it had all the injuries on my right side, but it's the same thing. Like when I jump, I'll feel myself. It's almost like my right leg's a little bit longer, and it'll be like a stagger. So, but
Yeah.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
I don't know why I do it because in my mind I'm trying to land even, but it's like my right's always just a millisecond ahead.
I think there's also some guarding, like the mental scar tissue lasts longer than physical scar tissue. Like you're subconsciously like, oh, I know.
I already know what's going to happen now.
But remember, you told me that story about when you first got back into operational and you had to jump off that box with one leg, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this.
They're going to do it anyway. Yeah.
All right, cool. Now let's go to a push-up. So for the push-up, obviously a little bit less movement involved here, but with someone that's had so many upper body injuries, a big focus, especially when we're doing horizontal pressing, is making sure that DJ's not favoring one side more than the other. So something he's worked on personally a lot with extra movements, extra corrective, extra mobility work, but then as well dialing in his technique. So it'll just be interesting to see what we have here. All right, hands on plates. Nice and slow. Money, Chris.
Most nervous I've been on 5 push-ups in a minute. Well, you're going to do 5. Like, oh.
So then jumping in with that push-up, we knew we weren't going to see a ton, but given DJ's injury history and how much we've been working on his mobility and staying as symmetrical as possible with horizontal pressing, we can kind of see the work that he's kind of put in. If you've noticed, DJ has a very high training age, so when he's descending down into a push-up, you're probably already on your own making self-corrections. He feels that asymmetry. He knows. He has such a high-level training age, so you can see he's kind of putting a little bit more force in the left side on that first push-up, then he kind of recorrects it on the second. Now he's putting more right, and then that third and fourth, he kind of falls into that smooth pocket, and he's kind of putting symmetrical between the left and the right. But I think the cool part here is before we did this test, DJ was mentioning something about his wrist bothering him, and he can jump into this in a second, but we can catch that real easily because you see the distribution of weight in his hand being slightly different. And I think that's cool because now it lends light to an objective measure to something that you were internally thinking. Yeah. So it kind of validates it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, as I go down, I can feel like an impingement in my wrist, not letting me full range of motion. So when I go down, I can feel my palms start to come off, shift my weight over just slightly over my right side. And the last couple weeks, been doing a lot of dumbbell work, and I can feel that. Like I can, get the same weight in each hand, and one side is getting significantly weaker than the other side. I think just from the compensation and everything else. Yeah, it's interesting to actually see it on a graph.
And I guess when you think about that, when you're holding the dumbbell, it sits in kind of a different spot versus a barbell because you're so restricted. So do you feel a difference in your left versus right hand when you are holding the dumbbells? I don't even know if we've ever talked about that.
I mean, like even at the angle, I can feel like a 5 to 8 degree angle shift.
Yeah.
As I descend into it, just a cleaner motion, I can get the pocket better.
These are things that are so nuanced and small, but honestly, these details, we kind of obsess about them because, I mean, this is what we do. This is what you do professionally. So if something, if you're really into working out or something, obviously we don't expect you to have force plates, but just that subjective measurement and taking notes on your own, like you don't have this, but if you're like, hey, I feel it more in my right elbow or more in my right hand, and just kind of track that. And as you zoom out and you look at the trends over time, maybe you'll start to notice things that you can work on or things that maybe you're being too hyper-focused on, you're actually doing fine. All right, next test we're going to do is going to do a mid-thigh pull. It's an isometric test. DJ's going to grab this barbell. We're going to set it up on the force plates. Basically, we're going to see how much force he's putting into the ground. And once again, that left versus right, is he biasing one side versus the other? And then how much force he's putting into the ground. With as much trap bar deadlifting we're going to do with this next upcoming cycle, this would be a good tracker for us with see how much success we're getting.
Never been more nervous on doing a deadlift with no weight.
Yeah. All right, wait a second. Ready to test. 5, 4, you're standing still. Stand still. Go. Pull. Rest.
Wow. Fuck. Didn't move. Good thing you have Brian Shaw here.
I think you shifted the walls.
What is bolted down? So it's not really fair.
But once again, this kind of showing us what we were already seeing with the jumping, with the regular body weight squat, but just DJ putting a little bit more emphasis on the right side of his body. But what you guys missed is before we were setting this up, he was even thinking, hey, now that I know these things, I'm thinking about putting more weight on the right side of my leg.
Yeah, like midway through the practice pool, it's like I can feel myself driving that foot into the ground. It's like, I mean, you can see on there, even on that one, like I was trying to compensate, so you can see it kind of level out. You can see the differences, and then throughout the course of the pull, I'm like left. It's almost like the clutch and the gas. It's like trying to find that feathering motion, like equidistant.
But that's with him pulling for the same spot for probably 3 seconds. But when you're doing a trap bar deadlift, that's way less than that. And you're just standing in once the lift's over. So if you're noticing that on something that's an isometric, think about how often that's happening when we are trap bar deadlifting, because you are, by the time you even get to think about it, you're already shifting to go back down. Interesting.
So, I mean, what do you think for that?
I mean,
we're seeing more single leg movements to try to match them out. More reps on one side, try to balance it out, or just more thoughtful and the intent you set up?
I think the intent, but also like our foot placement, like all the single leg hip movement stuff to make sure that our foot were equal, creating that symmetry between the right versus left, so as different as your hips are, to make sure we're not kind of biasing. So keeping doing, like, especially those single leg movements that we've been doing, like the hip hikes and the single leg loading patterns, just strengthening the hips down to the foot so we have a good connection between the two.
Well, I mean, you can just see it in the way I'm standing right now.
Yeah, I mean, shit, I do the same thing. If you're sitting at home, you probably hang out on one side. Yeah.
All my weight's always on this side. Like you call it hippie chesty bite. But just because this way hips go that way, it's just a natural resting position. Or like I'll switch it over and it's like you're trying to stretch out an IT band. But I do it so much, and this is but I shouldn't. Like, especially seeing that shit, it's like I stand upright, flat foot, whole foot on the ground, just make it more aware. But for me, yeah, I mean, doing a trap bar deadlift, to know that I do favor one side considerable. And I am aware enough to make those little hyper corrections on the ascent. And maybe I flex the left glute before I do the right. Like maybe it's not a simultaneous thing. Maybe maybe there's a feathering I don't know, something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's cool to see.
So these are just some objective measures that we've kind of thrown together with the new testing that we have. But we're really excited to get into this next block, honestly, in the GBRS Performance Program. And now we can kind of track this, a couple months, come back, see if we've made some improvements, track our progress.
Yeah, man. Getting lab coats' sleeves cut off, baby. Going to the fucking lab.
See you guys.
Thanks, man.